Amai, hello and good to see you. Welcome to our webinar series on strengthening tribal resilience, where we do a deep dive into FEMA's Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, or BRIC for short. This will provide an overview of the program, gearing up for our live Q&A session in January. We're really excited you've joined us today. We'll start off with introductions. My name is Katrina Tysinger, and I'm the Director of Grant Services with Tribal Ready. I'm a member of the Kuriyoung tribe in the Bristol Bay region of Alaska. I'm joined by Erik Mayo, President and Director of Project Management with Timbalier Resources, a multidisciplined professional service firm that has significant experience applying for and managing FEMA mitigation grants. Thank you for being with us today, Erik.
Thank you, Katrina. Thank you for having me.
We're really excited about this partnership. And first, I'll start off with a high-level overview of the program, and then I'll let Erik jump in and share a bit more in detail. The BRIC program is provided through FEMA, and the grant deadline for this round is fast approaching on February 29th, 2024. BRIC supports tribes' efforts in hazard mitigation and projects that protect the community's infrastructure. Total funding available for this round is $1 billion, and the award cap per project is $2 million. There is a 25% match amount, which we'll get into more later. However, there is a tribal set aside that we believe is underutilized, and I'll let Erik discuss that further. I'm going to pass it on to Erik here to share more about the program in detail.
Okay, thank you, Katrina. Yes, we've actually been working with Tribal Ready for a while now with grants, but we never worked together on this BRIC grant, which is exciting for us to jump into this because we feel like there's a lot of opportunity for the tribes with the BRIC program. So not sure who came up with this idea of this two-step approach, but I think it was genius because here we'll just provide a high-level overview of the program, what type of projects are eligible, the funding that's eligible, and then hopefully we really would like to see in our next Q&A session, January 5th, that we have some interested parties to kind of talk through what their ideas are and potentially, resolve any questions they have about the BRIC program. So again, that Q&A discussions January 5th, 9 a.m. Pacific, which will be noon Eastern. So please keep that in mind. And I believe we'll have a link somewhere at the bottom of this screen for them to click on to reserve to RSVP for that meeting. Okay, so just a brief overview of the program. So the BRIC program is a relatively new program. It was created in fiscal year 2020. It actually replaced the pre-disaster mitigation grant program, which it's very similar in a lot of ways in that it's an annual fiscal program that applicants can submit their project ideas. They don't necessarily have to have been impacted by a disaster to get the funding. The big difference between this and the PDM grant program is really the volume of money. So they statutorily established 6% set aside from basically funding that has been committed for disaster recovery type efforts. So that amount of money keeps growing, as we're unfortunately having more and more damage in the country. So this program is going to continue to go on for the foreseeable future. So it's definitely something that we need to take a look at and see if it fits for potential tribes. The priorities are a little bit different too, and we think they suit well with some of the ideas that we're looking at for tribes to be innovative, thinking in regards to future generations, how we can potentially protect our kids from the climate change. And they want to see exciting new creative type projects. We'll get into that a little more later. Pots of money. There's 4 main pots. This slide's important because the next slide talks about which particular tribes are eligible for the pots of money. So the state and territory allocation is $112 million. It's dispersed to the states, not on a competitive basis. It just goes straight to the states, and then they have the ability to distribute those funds based on whatever metrics are established. The state level, there's the national competition, which is the big prize, and obviously the bigger pot of money, but that's competitive, and there's some scoring criteria that they have that FEMA's established to ensure those projects comply with their priorities. But then, unique to the tribes, there's the tribal set aside, and you can see there it's $50 million. Apparently that has been underutilized, so this another reason looking to really get the word out so tribes can go after that funding. And with it being $50 million, it's a lower hanging fruit. It's not that you really have to put a lot of energy into the pushing out an application that meets FEMA scoring criteria and ranked against other tribes. It's really a set aside to potentially have the tribes all tap into. There is a cap in that if there is too many applications above $50 million, they're going to prioritize planning grants, and we'll go into that a little more. Then there's the building code plus up to enforce or create or enforce building code upgrades, and there's a tribal set aside there for $25 million. Okay, this is relevant to the previous slide. There is a distinction on the eligible participants for the tribes. The federally recognized tribes are able to tap into the $50 million tribal set aside. The non-federally recognized tribes can go through the state territory allocations, the $112 million. Both are eligible to compete for the national competition. And I'm not sure about the building code plus ups set aside and if that's available for both, but we're going to look into that. All right, so we know the project, the cost share is always concerned with these big projects. So, but the thing that we want to emphasize is think about the project first, and let's see, there's ways to maneuver this, and we do it all the time to try to minimize the out-of-pocket cost share for governments, because we know the strain that creates on them to come out of pocket for some of these big projects. So the general rule is federal government will reimburse 75% of the project cost, and then the applicant has to come up with 25% of non-federal, whether that comes from local funds or state support. But there are some designations that you can get for like the economically disadvantaged rural communities, or there's the resiliency zones that allow for a 90% federal cost share and a 10% non-federal. Unique to tribes, there's also some different pots of money they encourage. FEMA encourages to coordinate with Bureau of Indian Affairs for 638 funds. And then on top of all this, there's ways to show your contribution through staff or something of value, in-kind contributions, to get that cost share down. So again, let's think about some projects first, and then we can potentially come up with strategies to minimize the cost share. So the BRIC program falls under the Hazard Mitigation Assistance program, which has a set of it has a manual that you have to comply with for various grant administrative tasks and program specific tasks. Basically, there's two main types of projects. There's the mitigation projects, and that's your standard infrastructure projects, a local drainage pump station, generators, a microgrid. Those projects typically, although there's some wiggle room, typically have to be shovel ready. So you have permitting in place, you show a positive benefit cost analysis, any type of land rights or anything, all that stuff squared away for those projects. The second one is more the planning side, when you don't have an actual project in place. That's actually the type of project that we're kind of encouraging tribes to take a look at. They're not as big, not as expensive, but they lead to long-term action for a community. And we'll talk about some of the benefits of looking at these planning activities. So again, we always think of these planning jobs as the ability to think, wouldn't it be cool, like wouldn't it be nice if we could combine broadband and grid to put underground? Wouldn't it be nice if we developed a strategy to tackle climate change? There's a lot of opportunity to be innovative, which is a priority under the BRIC program through the planning side, because you're establishing a scope of work, you're submitting to FEMA and say, this is what we would like to tackle. And then you get the funding to develop, a team of subject matter experts, if you'd like, to study that. Again, there's a set aside priority. So these planning projects get priority over the actual mitigation projects in the event that more than $50 million of application is submitted for the tribal set aside. Talked about this exponential growth opportunity, and this is a big thing. Just get a planning grant in place. The momentum will come to study new projects, figure out how to finance those projects through other grants, develop the studies that you need for those actual projects. There's exponential opportunity here to build off of that. So the return on investment, I always believe, is astronomical for these types of planning grants, because it just gets the ball rolling. And then finally, there's no need for BCA for these planning grants, and that's usually a big hurdle, is the benefit cost analysis. You don't have the data, or if you don't have the data for those big projects, it can be really challenging to articulate the benefit of those projects. So, but you don't need that for the planning grant. And these are just project ideas. Let's, spend the next 2 or 3 weeks really thinking through this for your community, because we're certainly not going to come up with those ideas that fit each tribe. So really put some time into thinking, okay, what are our challenges here as a local community, and what would we like to tackle? So these are just ideas: an energy resiliency plan, microgrids, regional partnership resiliency strategy, where you can team up with multiple tribes and maybe offset the cost share with a bigger study to address a single problem that all the tribes have. Project specific studies, which are, if you have an actual project that you really would like to develop, but you don't have the studies behind it, you don't have the engineering and all that stuff, FEMA will allow for those type of projects. We talked about broadband grid development plans, public-private partnerships. They're big on developing partnerships to help leverage or, offset some of the cost as well in the resources. So you can look into that. I put the CRS action plan. That's the community rating system. FEMA flood insurance is getting higher under risk rating 2.0. CRS is a program that gives discounts to local communities that enforce stronger flood mitigation plans. So could potentially tackle that, which is something that we do at Timbalier. And then there's like a coastal climate impact study. We've seen that done quite a bit with local governments on the coast, as we know that's going to be an increasing threat across the country. Okay, I think that is a mouthful, Katrina.
That was a lot of information, but it does kind of get the wheels turning. And it kind of reminds me of the equivalent of doing like a feasibility study, or if you have a big project with your broadband network. And I feel like it will help tribes prepare as more funding comes down the pipe. Thank you so much for sharing. And we know that resilience is a recurring theme in the history of tribal communities. And this is a perfect opportunity to bring resilience to local infrastructure and start looking at planning for that. Considering all the information that's been shared, there are bound to be more questions and on scope and brainstorming ideas. So as a reminder, mark your calendars and bring your questions to our live Q&A session on Friday, January 5th at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You'll see the link to RSVP and you don't want to miss it. Guyana, thank you so much for joining us today. If you are a tribe looking to pursue the BRIC program opportunity, please reach out to us because we'd love to meet you and kind of discuss what you're thinking and potential projects down, for you specifically. Our email is grants@tribalready.com. And don't forget to tune in for our live session on January 5th. Thank you so much and be well.